ScopifyROM is the first of what we hope will be a whole bunch of museum applications that work for museums worldwide. We created the ScopifyROM app with the ROM, very closely with the ROM curators and with the staff here, to ensure that we came up with something that was both entertaining, informative, and accurate, so that people who come to the ROM can now act like curators, in a sense, see the things that the curators use in their assessment of the collection and of individual objects. So by using the app, either on an iPhone or an Android device or on a tablet, you're able to use these different scopes to look at the objects in the museum in a different way. We're able to take the skeleton and use our Scopify app in a way that allows you then to see what the dodo would have looked like when it was still alive. You have an inventory of things, and as you come across them, there is a QR code down there that releases the object. Okay, so you start here, you go into ScopifyROM, you come to this object, you then scan the object like that. You see, and then I find it, boom, click, oh, there it goes, and it loads it automatically. So then you get the object comes up, and you've scanned it, so you get rid of that, and you can pick your scope from there. You can animate it. You can see what it would have, what kind of an environment it occupied, what kind of motion it would have had. You're able to take the object here and pick one of the scopes. For instance, this says Animate. So you pick Animate and you see what would this dodo skeleton would have looked like, what would it have looked like when it was in its original form. So you actually see the dodo animated in its natural habitat. And you can watch this. And then if you don't quite know what you're seeing or why you're seeing it, although that's kind of amusing, you might want to just take that and go, okay, then it goes back and goes back into the museum case. Now, if you don't know what you are looking at, you just go to the information and you get information about it as you watch the dodos moving through their natural environment, da-da-da-da-da. It tells you what the curators have learned from understanding what a dodo would look like, the environment that it inhabited, and so on. There's another one we can pick here. If you go in there, you have a dial, and you can actually take the dial and you can skin the dodo at your own convenience. So you can see, oh, I see, that's how it looked. But it gives you the tools that you need to really interact with the museum and its collections. Again, you want to see what this means, you just go into the information. You go, when you look at the skin dodo, you'll see that this bird had wings. You can't see wings on the skeleton, but in the skinning process, you get to see the wings, even though it couldn't fly. You could see it couldn't fly because those wings are so tiny. There's no way they could have flown. So, and then it gives you other information too. It's a bird-like creature, but it actually has a very unbird-like, some very unbird-like qualities.
So I'm going to scan the QR code, and then that will right away bring up the kayak object, and we're going to use the develop scope to look further into it, and we can actually watch the kayak being built from start to finish by swiping through these images. So we can swipe through the images and we can see it being built. We can see all the different steps of it being built, building the frame and eventually putting the outside on it and tying it all together, and you can see at the end we have a completed kayak from start to finish. So if we want to see it in a different light, we can also look at the Animate scope for this one. And the Animate scope is going to show us the kayak in use on the water. So this would be used in harpooning, footage taken from the Arctic. And if we click the information icon, it will explain it all to us. So when you animate the kayak, you see two Inuit men hunting a narwhal. To hunt sea mammals, they use a technique that requires a lance and a harpoon attached to a sealskin float. And it takes us through the whole process of hunting. And this kayak is an example of the kind of sophisticated watercraft that traditional Inuit hunting methods depend on. And so it's really interesting to be able to see the kayak in action like that and get a whole different look at it. So we're just at the narwhal, and we're going to scan the QR code that's on the ground underneath it. And once we have that scanned, it will take us to the narwhal scope. And on the narwhal scope, there's a CT scan that we can look at. And when we bring that up, it will tell us about the CT scan we're going to look at. And what it explains is that the horn that a narwhal has is actually a tooth that protrudes out of the jaw. And then we can look at the CT scan here, and we can see that, in fact, the horn, as it's called, actually protrudes out of the jaw here. You can see a scan of it. So that's sort of a whole new way of seeing the narwhal that you wouldn't be able to see from just seeing it in the museum there. And then the other scope for the narwhal is the Animate scope. And this is, we look at that, and it's going to, as the narwhal splashes into the waters below, you can watch it swim in its natural habitat. So this is footage taken in northern Canada and Greenland. And you'll notice that it doesn't have a prominent dorsal fin like a killer whale, for example, would have. So we start the animation. You see it splash into the water there, and you can see it swimming. And there's an underwater shot as well of the narwhal swimming in its natural habitat in the Arctic. So that's two new ways of seeing the narwhal that aren't obviously visible from the museum floor.
There's a fair number of willows and stuff growing around it. There's parts